Director's Reflections for January 15th of 2023. Iconoclastic journalist, yesterday and today. Just like the young journalists of today, who are a kind of iconoclast in the face of the old paradigm of communication, so were those of the post-Trujillo generation. We entered the media in the convulsive decade of the 60s, when the consequences of the dismantling of the symbols and models left behind by 31 years of dictatorship were still being felt. And as expected, we also felt that from journalism, we had a share of responsibility in replacing a model of journalism subservient to power and being messengers of freedom on the very threshold of the democratic era. In the name of that nascent freedom, that society was beginning to recover and live. The journalist embraced his mission and his job without fear of risk when covering episodes of conflict and violence, exposing himself to all dangers. Nor were they afraid of questioning or confronting any authority, no matter how high or powerful, by casually interviewing them or in informal press conferences. Anecdotes of fights, arguments, and even struggles between journalists and authorities abound, reflections of a stage of mutual tension in which it was assumed that the press was the perfect counterweight to power or the fourth estate. Not a few politicians and one or another ruler were taken out of their box with uncomfortable questions. And in certain cases, those who stood out for their oppositional role were harassed by the security services, went into exile or jail, mysteriously disappeared, or were assassinated. It was a time of revolutionary turmoil where young people witnessed how street protests, guerrillas, and social movements against the status quo were paving the way for a free and more democratic system, here and in other parts of the world, in bumpy transition. And journalists who were neither oblivious nor indifferent to those birth pains of democracy were influenced to a great extent by those currents of political and social change and supported them. The press, in general sense, except for 2 or 3 insignificant outlets sponsored by the government or involuntarily pro-government line, but short-lived, was more masculine, more critical, and less tolerant of censorship or blackmail. Priority now go hand in hand with technological transformation and the task of informing, guiding, and enlightening audiences that outnumber the elite readers of the past poses other challenges. But in this new context, something is clear. The media and the journalists must never sacrifice the truth or lose independence and courage in denouncing events that threaten human freedoms. Because ultimately, the only value of symbol that the iconoclastic journalists of yesterday or today cannot destroy is that the one that turns the press into a guardian of those freedoms and the one that serves the truth and the best interest of society. For Listing Diario, voice over and translations by Indira Rodriguez.